Oh, it's fantastic. So average ticket is up 15%. Unprecedented, really, 50% rise in the last year. It's doubled over the last 2 years.
Just in the underlying commodity?
Just in the underlying commodity. And silver and platinum, by the way, have gone up 70% in the last year, so pretty phenomenal run.
Why is the average ticket, then, of the items you sell only up 15% when the price of gold is up 50 and silver and platinum are up 60 and 70%?
Yeah, so the bulk of the asset value is really in the gemstones and diamonds, and lab-grown diamonds are driving the price of diamonds down. So there's an offset there that's greater than the value of gold.
That's pretty amazing that it offsets it that much. But before we get to the lab-grown diamonds, I just want to stick to gold.
Yeah.
What do you see as the drivers behind this?
Uncertainty, political uncertainty, economic uncertainty, money printing, all three are alive and well and going to increase in the future. So I think people have really bought into that. And I think gold will continue to do well. Just historically, over the last 10 years, gold had appreciated 11% per annum. S&P is up 12%, so it's actually pretty close. Interestingly, over a 30-year period, there's zero correlation between the S&P and gold, so people are thinking about it as a hedge. And I think that's here to stay. And that will go to either gold or something like a Bitcoin. And over the next 10 years, I would imagine some of this run continues. Maybe not at a 50% pace, but it will do fine, I think.
So when you go to the market to buy gold, against whom are you competing? Is it, other jewelers, Indian, savers, other central banks? Who's buying it?
Central banks are buying right now roughly 25% of the gold that's out there. You're competing against financial investors as well as jewelers predominantly. But surprisingly, the financial investors are a much bigger part than people would think.
I was wondering about a piece of gold jewelry. If you don't have a gemstone in it, right? How much do you charge above and beyond just the weight, just the cost of the asset?
So there's a few things that go into it. One is labor charge. Second is when you're crafting a piece, you lose a certain percentage of gold. So it can be anywhere between 15% upwards to double, depending on exactly what the piece is. And that will go up more if they're studded with gemstones or diamonds.
And the gemstones, we have talked to you a lot about these lab-grown diamonds, this phenomenon that's really driven down the price. It's driven down the price of natural diamonds as well?
Yeah, so natural diamonds are down roughly 45% from their peak, which was March of 22. So pretty phenomenal. When all the other assets are doing really well, diamonds have struggled because lab-grown is a perfect alternative.
And what's the adoption rate look like to you? Because I'm sure at the beginning a lot of people were unsure about lab-grown diamonds, even though they can't tell the difference even under a loupe, unless they're extreme experts, right? A lot of people still want the safety of something that they're told is natural. Is that lessening?
Yeah, so this quarter, roughly 60% of engagement rings sold in the US will have a lab-grown center. That was 2% back in 2018 when the FTC said a lab-grown diamond is a real diamond. You just have to disclose that it's lab-grown. So 2 to 60% really in 7 years. Pretty phenomenal growth, and we don't see that slowing. I think we get to 80% adoption in the next 10 years for this.
What does this mean for other gemstones? I mean, can you grow lab-grown sapphires, emeralds, rubies?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's been happening since the 1980s. I think the difference is what we're seeing. So we're agnostic to whether we sell natural lab and for gemstones and diamonds. What we're seeing on—
You don't make a bigger markup on either one?
The margin is slightly higher for lab-grown, but then the average ticket ends up being lower, so it's kind of an offset that way. What we're seeing on the color side is 75% of what we sell is natural, 25% is color, is lab. And I think the reason for it, there's just like a spiritual aspect to resonating with the piece itself that you see much more in emeralds, rubies, sapphires. All of them have inclusions, and the inclusions are what make it more human-like in nature, whereas lab-grown tends to be perfect. On the diamond side, the adoption curve is very different. So 60% plus is lab, 40% is natural.
Well, because customers, they want a perfect diamond, but when it comes to a ruby or a sapphire or an emerald, they'd rather see a unique imperfection.
Yeah, so we've been trained with this idea for diamonds that a D-flawless, so essentially colorless and flawless, is the singular idea of perfection. That doesn't exist in color. There's 50 different shades of emeralds, of greens, and you and I might like very different shades. So you might like a Zambian emerald deep forest green. I might like more of a Colombian shade, and that doesn't necessarily happen with diamonds.
How's the business as we get into Hanukkah, closer to Christmas? What's it looking like relative to last year, let's say?
It's fantastic. We're up over 30%. We're growing very quickly. The industry overall is up over 10% this year, so jewelry has had a phenomenal year. In fact, of all the luxury categories, jewelry is doing better than handbags and everything else. And I think it's partly driven by gold, and the people, people feel like it's much more of an investment than in years past. So we're seeing that we're hyper growth right now.